Welcome to the Super Expander podcast. My name is Corrine Phelps, your host. I'm a business and growth coach, money mindset expert, and a multi-passionate entrepreneur. My journey has taken me all over, from working in finance to owning a boutique fitness studio. I found myself burnt out, miserable, and questioning everything. Saying things to myself like, there's got to be more to life than this. Refusing to settle for a mediocre existence, I went all in, learning how to harness untapped potential and rewire the subconscious mind to create an extraordinary life. The last 10 years have been a crash course in self-love, building a business, creating community, building wealth, and doing what it takes to just freaking go for it. My mission is to help you align to your purpose, rewire your subconscious to support your big dreams and vision, and create a life that you're absolutely obsessed with. So sit back, tune in, and prepare to expand. Sarah Sperry is a certified executive health and wellbeing coach and a Fair Play Facilitator. She has over 20 years of experience working in the financial services industry, where she was actively involved in leadership and advocating for better parental leave policies, as well as overall culture change. Excited to dive into all things health and well-being with Sarah. Hello, Super Expanders. Welcome back. I'm sitting here and I'm sipping a cup of rose tea leaves, hot tea here. It's like my new thing. And I'm really excited because I have someone I'm really excited to share with you. Let me just introduce you to Sarah Sperry. Welcome to the Super Expander podcast, Sarah.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm sitting here like smelling this tea that's coming up.
I love the tea. That sounds amazing.
It's really funny. Before I dive in and share with everyone, like how we know each other, how we're sitting here recording this podcast, it's funny how certain scents will at one point in your life were like repulsive to you, and then all of a sudden I can't get enough. So the smell of rose used to actually nauseate me years ago, and in like the last couple, I don't know, months or so, it's been like this thing. I'm like drawn to it. I want rose everything.
It's come back into your life.
Yes. And I'm like, it's really, really bizarre. And I'll share this too, is that recently I did this quiz, actually, our mutual friend, Ryan, which is how we're sitting here.
Yes.
I was like, you've got to take this quiz because there's these elixirs and I think you need them in your life. And so I take this quiz and it comes back and it tells me that I need this rose elixir, which I was already on this, like drawn to rose. And I was like, what is going on? And apparently rose heals your heart. So I need to mend my heart. Yeah.
And February is Heart Health Month. So there you go.
Yep. Here we go. And now I'll explain to everyone after my like just completely veered off the road description of rose and all the reasons why I'm obsessed with it right now.
I love it. So I'm going to have to try it.
Yeah. So I always love to give a little bit of context of how it is that you and I are sitting here on this screen, on this podcast, chatting with each other and sharing it with the world. So we have a mutual friend, Ryan, and she was Ryan was like, you've got to meet Sarah. And so she connected us, and here we are. Just like a few months later, we had a call, found out that you're like, we have a lot of parallels. And I was like, man, you would really, really be an amazing contribution to the Super Expander community. And here we are. So now that we're here, we got to go straight to the deep stuff. So
let's do it.
Everybody knows that's how it rolls around here. Who is Sarah deep down to her core?
I love that question. I don't get asked it every day. So I would say Sarah is a lifelong learner. We'll get into, what I do and where I come from and where I've been. But I've done a lot in my life, and I feel like every phase of my life, I'm always really like deep diving into, information and reading and just kind of constantly curious about whatever topic is, kind of in my life at the time. So yeah, I'd say that piece. I'd also say just kind of a people connector and kind of a natural relationship builder. And as we both know, Ryan, I would put her in that court also. And so we've known each other since middle school, and she's a couple of years younger than me, but I never felt that age difference, even when I was 16 and she was 13 or 14. So yeah, we've stayed in touch over the years, which is amazing. And so, yeah, just constantly meeting people and networking. And I love hearing people's stories. So
I love that. Yeah, Brian is a super connector, and I feel like that is it's a really powerful thing to be like that person.
yeah,
Something that you said in describing yourself that I think is really cool and amazing is that your curiosity to learn and kind of dive deep into whatever happens to be like at the top of the surface that moment. And what I really think is so cool about that is it's full permission to evolve over time.
agreed. Right. Because we do evolve as we grow and as we age and as we are in different phases of our lives. Right. And so I think being open to that is really important. And if you're stuck, in one phase and not open to kind of the world around you and, what's in front of you or what your body's saying, then, you're potentially passing up opportunities, I guess. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
absolutely.
my outlook, at least.
Absolutely. So there's been quite an evolution in your world. So let's kind of go, let's take it there.
There
So
has.
let's talk about that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, go back a few years because there's been some big shifts and changes and pivots
Yeah.
in how you show up and do the thing that you do. So start there.
Yeah. Well, I always worked in finance, the finance field, for pretty much my whole career. And really loved like business and, like I said, lifelong learner. I was in like financial sales for a little while, but always working for large companies and large corporations. So definitely corporate life, hustle culture. And I did that for a really long time, and I really thrived in it and loved it. And got into my 30s, started having kids. I finally had my last kid, my third kid, in 2016, and really kind of started, I think, advocating for for women and especially working mothers. And yeah, just, experiencing parental leave policies, going on maternity leave, from a large company standpoint, having to navigate that and being an employee. I've always worked in male dominated cultures. So I think, every person's experience is different. But I really just kind of felt strongly for advocating for, stronger parental leave policies. And if you look back historically, usually our male leaders are making these decisions about, how long you go on leave and depending on the laws in your state. Right. And yeah, I think, what I realized is being a working mother is really hard. And for a while it all worked for me. And I think, we as women can tend to carry like the mental and emotional load and invisible labor and kind of all those topics of what it takes to run a family. I do have a husband and a partner, and he's very involved. But at the same time, we're two working parents. We worked full time. And so, yeah, I mean, my stress levels in 2017, 18-ish were very high. I had a toddler and two older girls. Working in finance here on the West Coast. We wake up super early. We work New York hours. And so all the things, right? Having a nanny come at 5:30 because you can't drop your kids off at daycare that early. And so, yeah, it was all working until, really, I think I started experiencing some health issues related to stress, and kind of had to go on a journey to really figure out, what was wrong with me, and kind of going through our mainstream medical system. Doctors are great, and they're obviously super useful and needed, but at the same time, they're not trained here in the States to really ask you about your stress levels and lifestyle factors going on in the background. So, hey, you're struggling with anxiety. At that point, I think in 2018, I had a panic attack at work and really kind of had said to myself, something's really wrong here. I don't know what it is. I was also having some physical symptoms. And so instead of just taking anxiety meds, which was what doctors generally will prescribe, I kind of said, I'm not sure if I really want to go that route. And so really just kind of went on a journey to as we talked about, kind of, learning about stress and what it can do to your body, and, kind of trying to find other ways to solve for the issues other than potentially having to be on anxiety meds for the rest of my life. That didn't sound right to me. And so, yeah, obviously, 2020 hit, COVID hit. I was still working full time, still living this like busy, crazy, burnt out life. And finally said, after homeschooling 3 kids, in that spring of 2020, I said, this is kind of, I think now is the time to really pivot and do something different. I had started already exploring and getting some coaching certificates, because I did feel that coaching was a good fit if I wanted to kind of pivot and shift careers. And so really just pivoted that summer of 2020, and kind of launched my own coaching business, which is where I am today, 2.5, almost 3 years later.
Oh my goodness. I feel like there's so many women that are listening and they're seeing little shreds and pieces of themselves in that story. I feel like I kind of jotted down a bunch of things that I wanted to touch on as you were going through your journey, because I feel like I hear those and I'm like, oh yeah. So let's kind of reverse it back to first that piece of, I want to start at the hustle culture part.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as someone who has spent a good predominant piece of my life myself actually feeling like hustle harder and like liking that energy.
Yes.
And there's still this part of me that's like so connected to that energy, but in like a different way. It's like really, really starting to understand the difference between what hard work is and hustle is.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the differentiating piece and how someone might be able to even like identify that based on the journey that you've gone through.
Yeah. I mean, the hustle culture is kind of the culture of always feeling like we have to be doing, right? And for a long time, admittedly, like I thrived in that hustle culture, right? Like, completing 22 tasks on your to-do list and getting through them all and just constantly feeling like you're productive. And I think, in this day and age, right, technology comes into play where we, 24/7, right, are having dings and alerts and, we have to answer that email at 2 a.m. when we're awake and we can't sleep. We're constantly looking at our phones right now in kind of our modern world. So yeah, I think that's kind of the hustle culture, right? And also, companies, expect that out of their employees, right? And we also as high achieving women, put pressure on ourselves to constantly be doing and constantly be, seeking out that next title level and the next promotion and the next salary bump. And so it's kind of all interconnected. Hopefully that answers
absolutely.
the question.
Yeah. So, okay, then I have to ask you, what are your thoughts on, what are your thoughts on balance? But I'm going to preface before you answer that question.
Yeah.
Because I personally do not believe balance. I think it's a falsehood that we've been sold.
Yeah.
And the pursuit of balance actually is a piece of what causes some of this burnout. And the more that I have sort of, conceptualized and really thought about this actual idea is that it impacts women more deeply than men on a level, because all of a sudden when women entered into the workforce years and years ago, many years ago, was when this whole idea of work-life balance was being sold, because women are supposed to show up at work like they don't have a family at home, and then they're supposed to turn around and show up at home like they don't have a job.
Right. I tend to agree with you. I kind of like to say to clients and when I'm speaking to companies, right? Like I view it as work-life integration. I think that's a better way to term it and a better way to explain it, because I think, balance is a constantly evolving thing in your life, depending on your, family situation, depending on your job situation, depending on your age, right? And so I would tend to agree that balance can be a work-life balance, or the term balance can be kind of like a false perception term. And so I kind of like to use work-life integration.
Ah, yeah. See, I like that. I like that because, here's another belief I have about balance. So balance happens like right in the middle. And I personally do not believe that magic happens in the middle. I think it happens
Correct.
in the extremes. And so it's like, how do you start to create a dynamic, whether it's in a company or whether it's in your home, that you can exist in the extreme and know when it's time to come back towards the middle to kind of
Yeah.
recharge, rejuvenate, and knowing that that you're never actually striving to be in the middle. You're striving to be 100% wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think recognizing all of that you just stated so well, requires you to be able to listen to your body. And in our hustle culture, we tend to ignore the symptoms in our body, right? Oh, you feel an ailment, or you feel an ache and a pain, or you have a headache because you're overly tired and stressed, but no, it's fine. Like, I'll just take some Advil and I'll power through. Right. That's kind of that mentality in our hustle culture. And I do think, as a society, when we're kind of like working, living, breathing, that you're kind of training yourself to ignore all those, right? Like symptoms in your body.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And this was kind of where I was going with the next piece. So like perfectly, you like the segue, you set it up, you teed it up really, really well. So primarily in terms of like the people that you work with, are you working with primarily women?
Yes. So my coaching business really focuses on executive level and professional women. Most come from male dominated industries because that's, kind of where I came from. So I work with a lot of women in tech. I live here in Silicon Valley, in tech and in finance, but really all professions. I've worked with lawyers, women in consulting. So kind of all backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here is my thought, and like I'd love to have you weigh in on this. So I feel like this is a piece where with women, it's becomes more prevalent with burnout and with hustle and this ignoring these pieces, because really if you start to look at just, I guess, from the evolution of women and what we do, which is, have babies and raise them. And in the nature of that, you have to be able to kind of put your own needs on the back burner. You have to be able to ignore the things that are most pressing for you in that moment, because a child, a life, whatever, you're
Yeah.
caring for this little tiny human being takes precedent over all things,
Yep.
at least for in that moment. And so on a physiological sort of like cellular genetic kind of level, we are predisposed to be people pleasers. And
Yeah.
in that people pleasing, and when you bring that into a male dominated work culture, it all of a sudden just like pushes all the levers in all the wrong ways.
Yeah. I think you said it very well.
So when you're dealing with this kind of thing, this kind of
Yeah.
like condition, burnout, people pleasing,
Yeah.
ignoring the signs, whether it's on a physiological level, on an intuitive level, what sort of things do you do with your clients in order to, I don't know, bring it back to the forefront, to hear the voice, to hear the signs, and to like heed them? I have a question for you. Have you joined the Super Expander free mentorship community? If not, what are you waiting for? Stop what you're doing right now and text the word mentor to 202-918-3235. Text the word mentor to 202-918-3235. I send out weekly tips and inspiration to help you grow your business, to step into your wealthiest, most highest self, to harness your full potential and live an exceptional and extraordinary life. And the best part is, it's really me sending those messages. So text me, say hello, and send me your questions.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll add one more point. I think, you kind of mentioned, growing and birthing a child, right? And kind of physiologically training our bodies to maybe put ourselves second, right? As we go through the phases of growing and birthing a child. I think also, I do believe depending on the age and generation, I'm in my 40s, but we are conditioned, right, as young girls to believe in my generation that we can be or do anything we want. Our mothers didn't have all of the same opportunities that we did. And so, if you go to school, get a good college degree, go get potentially a master's degree, and I'm not saying money is everything, but, get a high paying job and earn money, right? Like you can be and do anything you want. And I think, there is a lot of that for women in their 30s and 40s, which is mainly the age group that I tend to see, of kind of becoming that high achieving, equal opportunity. I have the ability to be a C-suite or to be a senior leader now that our mothers maybe didn't have those opportunities. So I do believe there's a lot of that conditioning also happening early on, besides, the phase of motherhood. So yeah, I think the way I work with clients is a lot, obviously, like a lot of self-reflection. So, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but coaching is spending one-on-one time with clients, doing a lot of like self-reflection work. Most of the female clients that I do see, are working mothers, are struggling with the balance, and are having symptoms of burnout. So really like taking a little bit of a step back and, trying to understand like what their physical and emotional symptoms are, educating them on what burnout is, because you would be surprised. Not everybody understands what burnout is, and that it can show up, physically and mentally. And then from there, kind of like once you kind of peel back all those layers, is really kind of like setting up a program for success going forward, so that, depending on the person and their goals, that can look a little bit different. But, obviously, like, I think, boundary setting is a really important discussion and module that I have in my program, teaching women, depending on their workplace, right? Like how to set better boundaries in the workplace, how to set better boundaries in your home, not saying yes to everything, pausing before you say yes to a task, managing your calendar better. We definitely work on setting up your home so that, kind of retraining your thought process, like your home is like actually your most important organization. And so that if your home is not organized, you're probably not going to thrive outside of your home and your career, because things are so messy at home. So yeah, we spend time identifying stress triggers. Again, in our hustle culture, we're not always connecting, our stress triggers to maybe a reaction we have later on in the day, or we're like irritated at our family because of something that happened at work. And so, really taking some time to say to yourself, like, what triggers me? Like, when do I feel the most irritated? Like, why am I irritated? Why do I generally like tighten up when I have an interaction with this person? Trying to identify like toxic relationships that give you stress, right? So, there's definitely a lot that I kind of just threw out there. But I think those are all important pieces to kind of recovering from and preventing burnout going forward.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many different things. And it's like this, bringing this piece of awareness, and it's kind of this crazy thing when you start bringing awareness in of how deep and multifaceted it actually starts to become. I love that you were talking about the idea of the home being the first phase of organization, which actually made me think of this book. Have you ever heard of it? Fair Play?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm actually a Fair Play trained facilitator. So I
didn't even know that, guys. Just so you know.
So I do help women, couples. I've even done trainings at companies. So there are corporations that are kind of forward looking and want to, kind of help their employees with these concepts, right? Of kind of, how do you split up all the invisible labor in your home with your partner, right? And so there is kind of a method that we can kind of teach and guide to help people manage their home life better.
I know, it's crazy. When I read that book, it was blown away about the whole idea of just like running your house like a project manager.
Absolutely.
And in terms of like taking responsibility, and you're like, wow, like this is like, why did it take so long for a book like this to be written? It's really kind of like mind-blowingly genius, but then at the same time, actually, it's simple, right? It's just this whole idea of, but we tend to approach so many different things in our personal life without the kind of structure that we do in running a business. But when you kind of bring that into the household, into a relationship, and kind of create the structures around it, it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah. And I've met Eve Rodsky, the author. She's a Harvard trained lawyer. She's really funny. She's born and bred New Yorker. So she's got some like sarcasm and feistiness to her. And so, I think her messaging is really important to kind of, reaching gender equity, and it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah. So good. And I can't even believe it. I just like, who knew? I didn't know you were.
I know. We didn't talk about that when we first spoke.
I know. I love that. Okay. So along this journey of becoming trained, moving out of finance into this realm of kind of, health, well-being, but then integrating it back into how like your layers of experience, which by the way, I believe is like how we, we get to change this multifaceted piece, and we get to move and change hats into different realms, but we get to bring forward all of the experience, which is what makes us so unique. So I have to ask, along the way, there had to have been someone that really inspired you, showed you that you could move out of a big corporate job into creating your own thing and doing it your own way.
I talk about like male dominated industries and women and, women becoming leaders. I have to tell you, I've had like a lot of really amazing male bosses. So that's not to say like the experiences that I've had were all terrible with my male bosses. I've had one in particular that I think when I kind of told him that I was going to move on and kind of what I was thinking about doing next, just someone that I really, really looked up to. And really what he said to me is, because I obviously had shown him like that I think I want to do this. It's a big decision. I'm kind of unsure, but I'm telling you now because I think this is happening sooner than later. But what he really said to me is no matter what you do, I know you're going to be successful. And so just hearing that from somebody that I looked up to and really had as a mentor for a really long time and taught me so much about business and working in finance. That was just kind of sealed the deal for me that like, okay, I can do this. It gave me the confidence. Right. So that's kind of, I would say, inspiration number one. And then with regards to kind of like health and wellness field, like how can I pivot? And I would say two kind of like light bulb moments and one person in particular that kind of helped me kind of see that this could be like a viable next path. Really like, I think as a female struggling, I really went down this path of researching my like corporate wellness benefits. I worked for a big company that touted these like amazing benefits. And what I really found is that it was like a box checking exercise, right? And like these benefits that they're, claiming are amazing are just actually not really that useful to like a female, like a working mother that's struggling. And so I kind of had this light bulb moment, like, gosh, I wish someone would kind of just give me like a prescription for like how to fix myself. And like, instead of going through like all these like bureaucratic and like apps that like really aren't like telling me much, like, I think I can just build my own program. Right. And so I really kind of felt like women just needed more targeted resources to kind of help them with their, like with when they're experiencing burnout, to prevent and recover from burnout. So that was kind of like light bulb one, where I was like, I can do this myself. And then, randomly, one of my physical symptoms is I was getting injured all the time, like for no apparent reason. And I had all these like aches and pains, like my back was achy. I think I like fell and like hurt my knee, but like I got like an MRI and there was no damage. They just called it like blunt force trauma. But long story short, I had found this like really amazing physical therapist. And I had been seeing him for like all these different ailments for so long, like literally different parts of my body. Like I'd come in and he'd like fix my neck and he'd give me all these exercises. And then, like 12 weeks later, I'd be in there for my back. And so for like 2 years, we kind of like got to know each other. And he really, he took the time, he understands the body. And he took the time to really like ask me about my stress levels and like my lifestyle and like what was happening with my body and what was happening with my mind and like with my family and like all these things, right? We just got to know each other. And we started talking about how, what stress can do to your body and how it can create all these kind of like physical ailments along with, emotional and mental symptoms as well. And so I think, he really truly inspired me to like say to myself, this is all stress related. And I really need to like reevaluate my life and the pace of my life. And if this is worth it to be like sitting here in a PT office doing all these exercises for like 2 years straight. And so, yeah, I've gone back and I've seen him, since like I've, pivoted and we talk all the time. And I tell him, he really kind of helped me like open my eyes, I guess, to, what a kind of potential, different career could look like. And, you can do something different other than, work in a corporate setting in this hustle culture that I had been, so ingrained in for so long.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I like that you mentioned the idea of this injury being a thing that is a side effect, a symptom.
I think it's a physical symptom of stress.
Of burnout. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it's that you're actually having these injuries, it's actually a piece of, well, you're so busy, you're not present, so you're tripping, you're falling.
Yes.
I would
absolutely.
even go as far as to say the spiritual side of me, it's like the universe is nudging you. So you get a little injury and it's like, oh, my shoulder. Okay. And the universe was like, hey, pay attention here, and you ignore it. And then you get another one that's a little bigger because this time it's a punch in the back. And we continue to ignore. And when we don't heed these lessons and start to pay attention, all of a sudden you get a 2x4 on the back. And and if that's not enough, it'll keep coming until you end up like in the hospital or, worse because we're too distracted. We're not present. We're ignoring all the things. So
true.
Because I feel like there are people listening and hear that, like, how is injury a connection and correlation to burnout? But it definitely is. Something I hear when you're talking about the story and the inspiration is just like all the flaws that are inside of our healthcare system. And it's just how we as individuals need to be more empowered to seek out services such as health coaching, physical therapists. I mean, physical therapists are covered by PT, but there needs to be a deeper layer of defense that you're able to reach to that's covered by insurance before you start reaching for the specialist or the general practitioner, because by the time you get there, if you've had these other layers, you can really be your own detective. And that's how you end up being able to be your own advocate when you show up at a doctor's office, because they don't have the wherewithal to really understand all the nuanced things that are happening inside of your life. I mean, I think about this like in the context of coaching, right? Is that you only get what someone tells you. And if you don't know all the things to tell the doctor or to tell the coach, you put them in the back of your mind like these insignificant details because they're the fabric of your life.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I will say a lot of companies are getting better at providing like a wellness stipend or providing coaching to mid-level employees, not just their C-levels, right? So that, I have some clients where they're actually able to use the wellness stipend that their company provides them to pay for coaching, right?
Yeah.
So, companies are getting better. I mean, I think COVID, really pulled back the rug a little bit on benefits, right? And companies are starting to really reevaluate their health benefits, including their mental health benefits, to better serve their employees. So, maybe a silver lining, right, of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness. Okay, so I know that you're a busy lady. You got lots of things to do. So if there was one juicy nugget of wisdom that you could leave the audience with, the people that are listening here, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I've already said it. It's pretty simple. I like to say to people, listen to your body. I don't know if it's really juicy, but I think it's really, really hard to do. And even for me going on this journey, I catch myself sometimes, right? Like moving too fast and trying to do too much. And so really trying to teach yourself that it's okay to slow down. And, there's different techniques and strategies and things that work for, individuals, right? It's kind of an individual choice and process, and you have to experiment a little bit. I was not a believer in meditation, and have kind of, come around to that and, have found one and a specific kind of method that works for me. And so for me, when I'm feeling that like overwhelm and that I'm like going too fast, right? Like taking the 8 minutes to just close my eyes and take a little brain break. I like to call it is just really my way to kind of slow myself down and pull myself down.
Oh yeah, you got to slow down to speed up.
Yes,
It's so counterintuitive, but
exactly.
it is true. We have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate you so much. So how can all of the people listening, how can the super expanders out there listening, how can they find you? How can they get into your world?
Yeah. You can go to my website. It's just www.sperrywellness.com.
Amazing. And are you social media channels? Are
Yep.
you out
Social
there?
media at Sperry Wellness.
Amazing. You guys go follow Sarah. Of course, all of that will be in the show notes. So make sure you go give a follow, say hi, let her know that you found her from the Super Expander podcast, and learn all of the amazing things that she has to share about how you can cultivate more health and wellness in your life.
Awesome. Yes. Would love to hear from anyone.
Yeah. Thank you. We will catch you on the next episode. If you like what you heard, stop, drop, and leave a 5-star review and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. As always, the best way that you can thank our amazing guests is to share your biggest takeaway and then tag us on social media.